Hello, and welcome back to People's Perspective, where I believe everyone has a story to share, even if they do not believe they do. My name is Ryan, and today we have a very special guest with us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep. My name is Matt.
All right, and do I have your consent to record and eventually post this up on YouTube?
Yep, you do.
All right, I'll try to ask that at the end of the podcast. If I don't, just remind me. So, we tried recording this once before, and then we had some issues with the with actually just transferring the files over to my hard drive. So we're re-recording this, which this is not the first time this has happened. This is the second. The first time I have to reschedule with the professor, or even just talk to the professor again to see if he would be down. But been having a little bit of technical issues with all this, unfortunately.
That makes for a good warm-up session.
True, and it honestly, it kind of concretes the evidence of like I should probably get my own SD card for this because I'm just using the one that they have here, the Kent State Library.
Okay.
So if I just had my own, I could take it home with me, and then if the files don't transfer properly over to that, at least I'll have the SD card still.
That's true.
But I need to buy one. But I'm kind of waiting to see where this podcast goes before I put too much financial investment into it. That's why I'm using the library. It's free.
Yeah, why not, right?
Yep. Anyway, so let's get started. Let's start with, is there anything that you would like to share initially? Just any interesting facts? Any fun trivia about yourself?
I am a non-traditional student. I got started with school a little bit later in my life, and taking a little bit longer than normal, but I think it's probably one of the more interesting things about me right now.
Fair. I do know from our previous conversation you were homeschooled.
I was.
Was it for your entire education or just for part of it?
It was for my entire education, from start to finish, when it comes to, grade school, high school.
How was that then for you?
For me, it wasn't great. I'm not going to say that's the overall experience for everybody that's homeschooled, but just in my personal experience with it, I would have preferred to go to a public school.
Did you find it hard to socialize once you got out of?
Yeah, very, very hard. There wasn't a whole lot of opportunities when it comes to kind of building that social rapport with people, learning how to make friendships, maintain friendships, how to act around people. So the first kind of real opportunity I got to do that was when I was about 16 and got a job, and it was a very interesting learning curve.
I would imagine. What was your first job then?
First job was working at a movie theater. I was, kind of bounced around between the concession stand and cleaning theaters.
I actually thought about that for my first potential job was like movie theater stuff, but there just weren't a lot of theaters around by where I lived, or if there were, they're kind of going a little bit out of business until a new theater kind of came in. Theaters are kind of a little bit of a dying business right now, so I didn't really have many opportunities. My first job actually was at an arcade.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. They had a VR setup and everything.
Ooh, that's actually really cool.
Yeah, you would pay for like 15, 30 minutes an hour, and then you just have that time to use a VR, and there were a whole bunch of preloaded games and stuff on that. So that was a lot of fun. Though I'm sure in your experience, any job dealing with the public has its pains.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For quite a while I did mostly retail jobs, so I have plenty of stories from those, and that's why I'm going to do a writing career where I can do stuff at home and kind of be remote and not have to deal with people.
That's fair. Should have asked, what are you going to college for? What's your major?
I just switched over an English major, and I'm going to be doing technical and professional writing as a concentration.
Do you know what you want to kind of? I know that's a common question I ask whenever people talk about majors, but do you know what you want to do with it? Do you want to like write books, write news articles, things like that?
I do creative writing, but that's more of a hobby. I mean, who wouldn't love to just write a book and publish it and get famous? That's kind of the easy button. But no, what I'm looking to do is kind of like copywriting, technical writing. I'm not 100% sure where it's going to lead yet, but I know that there's a lot of potential even for doing something
All right. So I'm not very versed in the world of writing. I do a little bit of writing myself, but again, just kind of as a hobby every now and then.
Mhm.
But what is like technical writing? What is copywriting for me and people who don't know?
So funny thing is, I still need to look into it more because I just switched over. So there's a lot of different aspects of the field I'm still unfamiliar with. The thing I'm most familiar with right now is freelance writing. I know several people who do that, and that's basically when you can either go to colleges or you can go to businesses and you kind of sell yourself to them. And here's what I can do. Here's my portfolio, and you basically write articles for them, and you can get upwards of like $1.50 a word, depending on how good you are. So there's pretty good potential in that. I know copywriting. Uh, there's a lot of different random things you could do. Again, I need to look more into it because I'm sort of new to the field. So trying to figure out exactly where I want to go is kind of just a big cloud in my head right now.
That's understandable. I definitely get that. As I was a zoology major, I switched over to biology with the concentration in animal ecology. I get that question a lot too. Of like, well, what do you want to do with this? And it's kind of that thing of like, well, they don't. I mean, they have opportunities and things for you to learn what exactly that entails, but it's not exactly on the curriculum for when you're learning this stuff of what you go on to do in the future with it.
Right. It's kind of interesting because I think when you just get into the idea of something, like for biology, you probably want to work with animals. For English, for kind of what I'm doing, you want to write. Or like for psychology, what I was in, you want to help people. It's just kind of a broad overview, and it takes a while to really refine what you want.
Because everyone has that general idea of like, oh, I want, especially when they go to college, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that.
Yeah.
But then when you get into the real world, you got to kind of specify exactly what it is you want to do. And I think that's difficult for a lot of people because, one, it just depends on the job market. What's available. Sometimes you don't exactly get exactly what you're looking for, but you're getting something similar.
Right. I actually did a biology major for a little while, and kind of to jump off of what you were saying, you get into doing something with the idea of, something you want to do, but then you get into the real world aspect of it, and you start to find out there are all these little aspects that you really don't like. You like it on the surface, but when you start getting really deep into it, you're like, this isn't for me. And it takes a while to do that sometimes, unfortunately.
And it can be the type of thing where like you want to do something your entire life, but then when you get up and to do it, you end up working for a company that you really despise.
Right.
And that's an unfortunate reality to the situation of like you could be working for something your entire life, and then say you want to work with marine biology your entire life, and then you end up going to work at SeaWorld, and then you see like the monstrous things they do there, and you're like, this is not at all what I want to do. I want to try to do something better. But sometimes you just kind of are out of options at that point.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, especially when you spend all that time, money, and effort getting there.
Exactly. So I want to circle back then to your with your homeschooling. What was that like? It had to have been a strange experience because was it both your parents who taught, or was it just one?
It was just my mother who taught, and if I hadn't done it since I was young, if it wasn't the only thing I had done, it would definitely be a really strange experience. To me, going to public school was a really strange experience. I didn't, but like the idea of going to a public school was a really strange experience. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't. It's kind of the thing. Like I'd wake up, do my morning routine, whatever that was, and then just get into doing my subjects, whatever, math, English, whatever have you, and then I'd be done. And then so like, the entire day I would just be like in the house. And we kind of lived in the country, so there wasn't a whole lot to do. So, it kind of confining if I had to put a word to it.
Yeah, because especially what's nice about school is you do get to get out
Exactly.
of the house, and depending on whatever, like, because obviously if you have a terrible home life, like for some people, school is that retreat, that getaway,
Exactly.
For those few hours. So, and I don't want to assume how your home life was, like, good, bad, whatever it was. If being confined to that all day is going to cause some pretty negative tones in that feeling.
Absolutely.
Just it's gonna definitely cause a little bit of a stress and anxiety, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. It could definitely compound the issue for sure.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't imagine that type of thing, because I just don't think that would be for me at all. I mean, I think I would enjoy it. Like younger me would probably think that I would enjoy homeschooling and never having to go
Mm-hmm.
out and
Mm-hmm.
like staying home all day. But then when you get to the actual logistics of it,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most kids already struggle to get along with their parents as is,
Yeah.
and then to have them be like a teacher, someone who has to like have, I'd say sometimes more of an authoritarian role than like a parent would,
Right.
because they have to be like, no, you have to get your work done,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously you can't like escape home and then just ignore it at all because then they're your parents and they're right there. Not that
Mm-hmm.
you should just be ignoring your work anyway,
Right.
but obviously, I mean, I was a kid who always put everything off to the last minute, and if I just had my parents on my ass the entire day
Mm-hmm.
about like getting work done, I know that would just annoy the hell out of me, and that would just be a huge pain.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
I'm very glad to have actually. I mean, high school for me was a bit odd.
How so?
Well, my first 2 years, we discussed this before, but I went to a career center for my junior and senior year, and that was really really nice. When I went to my home high school, it just wasn't for me. It really, I just struggled a lot. I felt like there was no purpose to it.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was just kind of floating in a like liminal void type space where I
Yep.
was just like I felt no reason to continue doing what I was doing because I'm like, what is this actually preparing me for?
Yeah.
There was nothing that I felt was actually useful to that for what I wanted to go do,
Mm-hmm.
which I would argue there probably wasn't. Which is why I was so glad I went to my career center. I
Yeah.
talked about it before, but I'll talk about it again. I went to the Mahoning County Career and Technical Center, and it was a dream. They had a whole bunch of different programs. The one I went to was biotechnology, which was later changed to biomed. And it was everything I could have asked for. We had animals in the lab that we had to take care of, which I know sounds like it would be kind of a pain, but it was a responsibility we enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously you got to have animals in the lab, and every now and then we'd have a bunny and we'd let them run loose in the lab if we closed all the doors or something, and that was fun. We had chinchillas.
Oh, those are cool.
Well, we had one. We had two, but then one unfortunately passed away during the summer when we were going into that lab.
Mm.
And apparently, chinchillas are not very good with being solitary animals.
No, they're not at all.
Yeah, it kind of ended up getting very depressed. But we had a whole bunch of different stuff. We had hissing cockroaches,
That's interesting.
which are surprisingly pretty cool and pretty chill animals. I mean, you wouldn't think cockroaches is making cool pets, but honestly, they were just kind of fun to just kind of interact with a little bit. Because obviously they would make this like high pitched hissing noise, and it was just kind of a cool thing.
That's interesting. So, are the hissing cockroaches, are those the big ones, or are the Madagascar cockroaches the big ones that you kind of conjure up the image of when you think of a cockroach?
I'd say the hissing cockroaches are a little bit bigger than just average sized cockroaches. I'm not entirely sure on like species of cockroaches and stuff like that. So I couldn't say exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I know some cockroaches can grow to be really big.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, like you go to zoos and they have like a little exhibit with cockroaches, and they're like half the size of your hand.
yeah, they weren't that big. I'd say they're about the size of 2 fingers.
That's still pretty big.
Pretty big, but like I'd say that's about average size for a cockroach. Maybe
Yeah.
a little bit small. Like I said, a little bit bigger than average size.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have any snakes or spiders because I believe there was someone there who was just like deathly afraid of them.
Mm.
So that was kind of unfortunate, but I would have loved to add a snake there. We did have some reptiles. We had not a leopard, what was it? It was like a little green small lizard, an anole.
Yep.
Um,
I had some of those when I was younger. They're fun.
yeah, they're cute little guys.
Mm-hmm.
I try taking care of the anole most of the time because I really enjoy lizards
Mm-hmm. Same.
and reptiles. I think they're really cool. we had a little mini aquarium, like a little aquarium that we had a whole bunch of fish in. That was we were starting to kind of take care of it a little bit. But obviously during that COVID hit while I was in the career center.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that brought everyone closer together because how the schedule would work previously, you would like for half the day you would be in your regular classes, like your maths or sciences, or I guess not sciences because that would be in your lab, but like your maths, your writings, your histories, your other classes and stuff like that. And then the rest of the day you would be in your lab. Well, the way it worked, all the regular classes went online, and you would just spend all day in lab. So we wouldn't always have something to do. Sometimes we would just kind of sit in lab for hours and just discuss on whatever interesting topic may have happened. And I know one day, I think this was pre-COVID, but we ended up we dissected quite a few things too. We had dissected a small chihuahua, which was apparently just in the freezer that we had because the career center I went to was also a place where adults could get like their GEDs and stuff like that, so they could get a high school diploma equivalent.
Yep.
Without having, if they skipped high school or anything like that. So apparently the medical field that they had there just had one, and they weren't using it anymore. So we were like, hey, can we dissect it? Obviously, it would be a cool experience to be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
So we did. Not all the students, but a handful of us did.
Yeah,
and that was just
primarily the ones who were interested in biology or anything like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I talked before about we had dissected squirrels that were recently hunted, because most of the time when you dissect something, they're filled full of formaldehyde, and they're kind of flushed out, so there's no blood or anything like that, and there's nothing like that. And obviously the teacher always asks hey, if you're uncomfortable with any of this, feel free to step out. It's not going to be we'll find something else for you to do.
Right.
We also did blood testing, our own blood testing.
Oh, that's interesting.
We pricked our fingers with a little medical
the thing used for diabetes testing, sugar
stuff
testing.
Like that. We put it on little dishes, and then we added stuff to test our blood type, which I got mad at my partner for because he accidentally put there's something different for to test if you have the A, and then there's something different to test if you have B, and then there's something different to test if you have positive or negative blood. So then obviously through those three tests, you figure out if you have A, B, O, A, B, and then positive or negative. And my partner accidentally put all of the all one of the things in for all three of them because he just got confused on it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wasn't actually too upset, but I'm like, dang, I would have liked to know my blood type.
Yep. Now you'll never know.
No, well, I mean, I can figure out if I ever wanted to, but I mean, it's whatever.
Yeah, it's funny you were talking about the high school equivalency. Going back to the homeschool thing, fun story. Well, not so fun, but so all the years, homeschooling, it was a while before I decided I wanted to go to college. Things had to line up in life. Went through a bunch of stuff, but when I decided I wanted to go through college, I started interviewing with a couple of local schools around me. And at one of the interviews, the person I was talking to, she was like, you'd be a good candidate. We just need to get this, this, and this, and your high school transcripts. And that set off a little alarm bell in my head, and I was like, I don't know if I have those. I have to look that up. So I go home doing some research. Long story short, basically, the person who's homeschooling me would have had to send in all my grades, basically everything to prove that I was doing what I was doing. And somehow that didn't happen. So, the K through 12 that I spent, all those years doing didn't exist in the system. And, it was quite a blow, but it's really nice to show the use of the technical schools like you were talking about, because that's where I went to get my high school equivalency. And I didn't know what to do, didn't know where to go, so I was calling around, and, I called this one place around me called BOCES. And because I was a resident, they actually did it free for residents.
Oh, that's nice.
And, it took a little time to get done, but That was compounded by the fact that COVID started the second class that I went to. The lockdown started, so everything transferred online. It was this big thing, which they actually handled really well. But
So you're trying to go back to get a high school equivalent, and trying to go back to actual school, and then immediately you have to stay back home. You
yeah,
have to stay
exactly,
home and
exactly. Yeah, it was kind of frustrating because it's like, oh, this is exciting. I'm actually doing stuff. I'm actually out, and then life is like, no, you're not. Go back. Go sit on your couch.
you're staying home all day for now.
Yep.
That's pretty unfortunate. I wonder if COVID's going to be like one of those things where we look back in, say, like 20, 30 years, and it'll be like, oh, I remember where kind of like the whole 9/11. I remember where I was when this happened. Like, oh, I remember where I was when COVID struck.
Yeah.
Or when COVID, or not exactly like when we found the news about COVID, but like I remember what was going on in my life when COVID happened and how that affected me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because COVID was such a big thing for so many people, and so many people have so many like different stories about how they affected them.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's just a really like random kick in the teeth from life.
It kind of was, yeah.
Just out of like left field, out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was considered at the job I was at. I was considered an essential worker, so I didn't even get out of like having to do like the work aspect of it. My hours got cut, but yeah. Fun fact: if you work in like a heating or plumbing store, that's considered essential. Obviously, if your furnace goes out, you need to have it taken care of. So yeah, I wasn't able to get out doing that.
There's not exactly working from home when having to deal with someone's furnace.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to be out there doing it.
So it sounds like you worked at a wide variety of jobs then.
Oh yeah, yeah. Everything from like Walmart, Lowe's to random, like I said, a plumbing, heating store. It sold a bunch of stuff that I couldn't even begin to describe to you.
Was it easy trying to find jobs, or was it difficult in
trying
to find things?
It was pretty easy to find jobs for me. The job market in the areas I lived in New York before I moved here were pretty decent. So, I mean, if you were fine working the retail stores with high turnover, but
yeah, I'm just asking because right now I'm looking for my own. I'm looking for an actual job for myself, and it has been a bit of a pain.
I've noticed that when I moved here, it took me a while to get a decent job. Like, I was used to putting in a few applications, getting hits on all of them, and when I moved here, I think I put in probably close to 15, 20, and I got maybe 1 or 2 calls, and I was like, wow, that's like completely night and day from what I'm used to.
Oh, yeah, I mean, especially because I'm looking for more working with animals, like dog shelters and stuff like that. I applied to this one place, I won't name it for any reasons, I went in for, it's like a little doggy daycare that's not far from where I live, and I just haven't heard back from them. I've called multiple times. Like, I went in for the interview. Everything seemed to go good. I did a working interview that day where I just went in with the dogs and just to see how I would do, because obviously that type of job isn't for everyone.
Right.
Not everyone can handle just like being with the dogs all day and making sure everything's all right.
Yeah.
But I handled it fine. I had a blast doing it, and I just haven't heard anything back from them. And I've kept on calling and being like, hey, I just want to hear something back. Can I speak to this person who I spoke with on my interview? And they're always like, oh yeah, we'll leave her a note and we'll make sure she gets this. But I just never get a call back, and I'm just like frustrated. Like even if I don't have the job, I would just want to know that at this point.
Right, just to get some closure on it.
Yeah. Just not hearing back at all is completely frustrating.
Then
all other shelters I've applied to have been like, oh yeah, we want like experience.
Yeah, it's really hard. Like, that's a thing now. Like, even entry-level jobs want a bunch of experience. And it's like, it seems like they're just trying to eliminate having to interview so many people.
I suppose it feels odd. I guess they know they'll get someone eventually, but maybe not, because one place I applied to, it was a veterinarian clinic that also had a shelter attached to it. I was just looking on Indeed and I applied for it, and I didn't get an interview. I ended up calling the place and I said, I applied on Indeed, waited about a week, called into the place, and I said, hey, I put this in on Indeed, and I just wanted to see how it was like, if anyone checked up on that. And I said, our manager will check up on it here soon. And I was like, okay. And what happened is I got rejected, and then they put another job posting that then said 1 year experience required.
Yeah, that's kind of low.
So it's kind of like, well, clearly you're a little bit desperate for like someone to work there.
Yeah.
But you're not going to even give me a chance.
Yeah.
For like even like an interview or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it might even have been longer than a week. It might have been like 2 weeks or 3 weeks that I waited before I called or said anything.
Wow, and yeah, that whole time you're just kind of like, what's going on?
That, and I'm like, clearly you haven't found anyone in those 2 to 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then you like someone comes knocking on your door saying like, hey, I'd like to work for you, and you're like, yeah, we're not even going to give you a chance. We're going to raise the bar so we don't get people like you to apply. And it's like, then you're just not going to find anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of places do that. And something else interesting I learned recently that companies will do is they'll put out like ghost postings, ghost listings. Basically, like they'll put a posting for a job that doesn't exist on something like Indeed or, and it's like, I kind of wonder how many of those I've actually applied for. And really, I think it's to appease like human resource to show they're actually looking for outside candidates, kind of like that's a requirement, but this is like a little loophole they can get around doing that and then just pull somebody from the inside.
And if that's what any business loves finding, it's loopholes to get out of actually doing what they're supposed to do.
Oh, yeah.
If there is an exploit that they can find, they will do it.
Same with people. I think that's just human nature.
I mean, I feel like there are people out there who just like, if they knew that exploit was in there, just wouldn't take it.
Yeah.
Just be like, well, I got to do it this one. I know for myself, if I'm not looking for loopholes to take out of life. Like if I ran a company, I'd be like, well, I want to do everything by the books. I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to like donate $5,000 to charity and then like, oh, now I don't have to pay taxes or something like that.
Right.
However that works, because I know that's some sort of there's something along those lines of like you can donate to certain charities and then you get like a tax break or something like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
At least I believe there is. I might be speaking out my ass there, but I know there's some way that rich people get out of like having to pay certain fines and fees. And
I'm sure there's a ton of ways. They probably have a book written about it.
Yeah, but they only share that with all the upper echelon.
Yeah, basically. Whenever your net worth becomes worth $1 million, you get one in the mail.
It's like a little magazine that just kind of pops in. Even $1 million, I feel like it has to be like.
You're right, with inflation, it has to be more.
Yeah.
Let's say 10 million.
Yeah, say around 10 million. Because, I mean, in that case, like YouTubers, a lot of YouTubers would get that. Because a lot of YouTubers have a pretty high net worth. I would imagine at least, or at least solo YouTubers who do a lot of stuff.
I think that's fading a little bit, but yeah, for a time, like there were some YouTubers that were making crazy money.
I mean, they're still kind of like, if you think of like the Mr. Beasts.
Oh, yeah.
Out there. He's making crazy money, though.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of his content.
I've actually never really watched it, believe it or not.
I haven't watched it, but I think just from what I see, it feels a little bit exploitative. Obviously, what he's doing is like, it's good. It's a net positive, but it feels like it's a net positive in a weird, kind of like in a loophole way. Like, did you see his video where he cured like 10,000 people's blindness?
Yeah, actually, I did see that one.
Like, obviously, that's a overall good thing.
Yeah.
But also, it kind of sucks that I didn't even know that's something you could do. I thought you had blindness, you just had to live with that forever. I didn't know that was like a procedure you could get to cure. And now I'm thinking like, well, isn't there now? I think there's a systematic problem of like people who have these disabilities that we can cure. So, like, I see things like that, I'm like, oh, that's so cool he's doing it, but now I realize there's a problem with the way things are done.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Or just, like, that idea of making profit over, like, doing, I guess, a good deed.
Yeah. You kind of have to wonder, like, where's the balance between intention and the good done? Like,
yeah, also now he's working with, like, Lunchables.
Really?
Apparently, and, like, people have a problem with that because of Lunchables, like, very low nutrition rating for children, and obviously he's a YouTuber who
Like has a lot of influence over
Yeah,
people.
a lot of child influence, and
Yeah.
kind of like his main audience are children and people who like
Mm,
watch that content. So people have problems with that. It's him and two other YouTubers, and I think who he's working with, people also have a problem. I forget who exactly it's with.
yeah.
Um, but I remember because he also did the I don't know if you ever tried his chocolates.
I haven't. They're kind of overpriced, and I figured they probably weren't that good.
I've actually had some because I've got them at Sheets before. I don't
Hmm.
know if they're that much more expensive than like regular chocolates, but they're not bad.
Yeah.
They're certainly good chocolates, and if they're what they say they are, if they're like nutritional chocolates, then they're not bad.
Hmm.
But
No, maybe I'll have to try them.
it's still. Did you see one of those things, like, or one of his posts where like he talked about like, oh hey, if in Walmart, if you see all the Feastable things out of order, you should put them back in order or something like that. It was some either tweet or some comment he made on YouTube or something like that, where like he was basically telling the children, if you see people messing up the Feastable things, rearrange them back in order.
That's weird.
It was just a silly little thing. And then obviously he had controversy with someone he worked with who turned out to be like very strange. I don't want to say like a predator or anything like that because I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
I think his name was Chris something.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know everything about the case 'cause, again, I didn't pay attention to that, but I just know it was someone that or like one of Mr. Beast's like editors or someone he used to work with or something like that, who turned out to be just kind of a problematic person.
Yeah.
So people have been like, I don't know. Mr. Beast is one of those people on YouTube I see where I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out there was something negative that came out about him.
Yeah. I think it's hard too, like when you have people that work for you, because a lot of people that have those kind of intentions, they're really good at hiding them. So it could also be something where he just didn't know. But I know nothing about the situation, so I can't really comment on it.
But even just the other stuff he does, like the Lunchables stuff, like
Yeah.
that, I'm like, you're marketing like a very. It's like if you were to market like Lucky Charms and Fruity Pebbles to children, like a very sugary cereal.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, buy all this. And obviously the cereal business is already like a scam. I don't know if you've seen all those articles about how like cereal companies like paid for all those advertisements of like breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Yeah. Yep.
And how they kind of lied about like their sugary intake and stuff like that. But just things like that where I don't know. Do you watch a lot of YouTube? Do you have a lot of YouTubers you follow?
I actually don't. I've over the last probably year slowly kind of been getting away from social media. It was taking up a lot of time in my life, and I kind of realized it, and I was like, you know what, I could be doing other things.
It's completely fair. I was just gonna ask, are there any like? I guess like this can also be like to any like online figures or any like superstars or any like influencers. Do you like? I definitely like have categories of influencers where like I could see this person being problematic, and then like this person, it would take a lot. Like it would really have to come out of left field for this person to like do something bad.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Yeah.
Like for example, the game theorist, Matt Pat. He's just an overall like very good guy, very down to earth, very just nice individual. Where if he were to do something bad, I would just like my mind would be blown.
Yeah, it's kind of like the first like people that I can kind of really think of are the Vlog Brothers, and of course because I'm trying to think of it, their names are completely escaping me. They're pretty famous authors. As I'm talking, I'll look it up, but they've done a lot of really interesting content. They started kind of just with going back and forth, talking to each other through vlogs, and it turned into this kind of big thing where they got traction. People really enjoyed watching it. John and Hank Green. And you know, they started doing educational videos and kind of like overviews of history, science, and all this other stuff that was like really useful, especially like when I was going through that high school equivalency stuff. They used their videos a lot, and it was nice to have like condensed, to the point, accurate information right there that you could just kind of watch like a 20-minute video be brought up to speed on stuff.
Yeah, I definitely seen a little bit of Hank Green's stuff because I know he does a lot of shorts where he explains a lot
Yeah.
of like just random facts that happen.
Yeah.
Definitely seems like a really good dude, and
Mhm.
one of those things where like I don't know them, I haven't watched a lot of their content, but
Mhm.
like I don't know, I see someone like for example Elon Musk, and I'm like, oh yeah, big problematic dude, big red flags. I would not be surprised if he did like if the stuff came out that was like abhorrent things that he did to like his workers or like his family or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's just like one of those things where it's like someone like him, I could be like, yeah, I could tell he does shady things,
Yeah, I think it's
and maybe that's just me being a judgmental prick, but
no. I mean, it's hard because there have been so many very prominent figures that have very problematic pasts or problematic presence. Like if you look at somebody like Jeff Bezos, you could argue, two sides of a coin. You could like, well, he's creating a lot of jobs, and then you could argue, well, the jobs he's creating, he treats his employees really poorly. And there was one instance where the workers weren't allowed to leave. This factory down south got hit with a tornado, and a bunch of people died, even though they were under a tornado warning. And it's like, you're kind of treating people like machines at a point.
yeah, that does. I don't know. I feel like there's just such a distance between people like us and people like them, where and I wonder if it is just the money that does it, or just shitty people get away with the shitty things, and because they're shitty people, they get it like the businessman mentality, where businessmen will always do things to undercut each other, to get ahead of each other, and stuff like that. And I just wonder if like those businessmen type people are inherently like, do they have to be shitty people in order to get away with all these things? Because good people just don't take those opportunities. Kind of like what I was saying before with the loopholes.
Yeah.
Like I just don't see myself who would like take these loopholes to get out of doing these things because I'm like, well, these things are here for a reason, and I want to like abide by all these things I can.
I think it starts small. I think it starts with like little things. People come to you, hey, I can get you a deal on this if you do this, and you're like, well, my sales are kind of low. I need to get my sales up. So you do that, and then that kind of gets you in the door. And then you just keep doing it, and you slowly, I think, just lose touch with reality. You can kind of desensitize to almost anything.
Just kind of realize, like, oh, I've gotten away with so much at this point that I'm kind of untouchable.
That, and it just becomes normal. I just think maybe you don't even think about it anymore.
That's right. I'm sure they probably have other people to get to just do all the shitty stuff for them.
Oh, yeah.
And just, like, be like, well, technically, I had no idea any of this was going on. I just left it to my advisor, and he did everything, so.
Kind of reminds me of Charles Manson, actually. He swears up and down he never killed a person, and that might be technically true, but he influenced a lot of people to do it. So it's just kind of interesting when you look at like parallels of stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely definitely a very odd world we live in.
It really is, and it's becoming odder by the day.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I obviously don't want to get too political about anything,
Right.
but when you look at America compared to other countries, it's just always so strange. I mean, a big one I always think about is I went to Australia over the summer.
That's fun.
For a study abroad. And one of the things that was made because one of the things we did was we learned about the native people of Australia. One of the things made very clear is that Australia has made a formal apology to the native population for what they did. And obviously we don't have like anything like that in America.
Oh, God, no.
We have certain like I don't know if they're laws or certain like bills or some things like that to help give compensation, but there's no like formal apology.
Right.
And like on the flight over, like even on the flight over to Australia, I forget exactly what was said, but there was like something that just mentioned that, like, and we want to respect the native people who came before us, kind of messaging. Which I just thought was a very cool thing.
It is.
Because
it is.
Obviously there was a lot of things that happened where people were like, oh, these native people knew, like, their life was different, but they knew a lot more things than we did. Like for the bushfires, for example.
Yeah.
The native people of Australia used to do bush burnings and
Right.
do controlled fires, and then the colonizers came in and said, "That's preposterous. This is insanity. You're just burning stuff for burning stuff, and then they
These
just
are
like
caveman tactics.
exactly, and then they like band it all together,
Yeah,
and they were
how'd
like,
that
you
work out?
can't do you can't do any of this. And then recently we've discovered like just very recently we discovered the flaws of this of like oh yeah like it's better to have these little fires because it keeps the brush from building up and then causing these huge fires that spread like the entire country.
Yup.
Which is kind of what happened back in what was it 2023.
Yeah, I remember there was some pretty nasty fires that went around.
I don't exactly remember what year. I remember it was like a little bit after COVID or around COVID, so like 2021, 2022, 2023. I don't exactly remember when, but there were some pretty nasty bushfires.
Yeah.
So now Australia's like running back that decision to be like, oh no, we have to do controlled fires in order to, because not only is it important for like protecting the environment, it's also a key factor in like those like reproductive cycles of certain like species.
Right. Exactly.
Certain trees.
Yeah, they need the fire.
Yeah, they will like their like reproductive organs only go off when there's like extremely heated temperatures. So just things like that, like obviously very important. Environmental reasons for like doing all these things that like just people came in and said, well, we don't understand it, so we're just gonna kind of kick you all out. And obviously you have the issue of like them bringing in, like they brought in foxes to hunt, and like they brought in like dogs and cats and things like that because I thought, well, we have this, there's a population of this, and like we're just gonna bring it in, and you know, because we want to hunt them, and then they get out eventually, and then now there's a whole new foreign species added to this population, and then it is killing all the natural prey that don't like that just have never encountered these types of things before, so it's kind of a problem. Apparently, another big one in New Zealand is kiwi. The kiwi bird. It's like in threat of extinction because people brought in like cats.
Is that what happened?
I believe I watched a video very recently about someone talking about it, but it was just a YouTube short. So it was from I think a credible person who seems to know what they're talking about. But obviously, if it's a short, I can't get the full detail of the history of it.
Right.
But they talked about how people would bring in cats as pets or like foxes for hunting, and then because the kiwi evolved to like with no natural predators, you essentially or suddenly introduce these predators, and now the kiwi population is dying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprising, especially if you bring something like cats in. Cats are, you know, great house pets.
But once they get out,
they're vicious predators. They're like little tiny apex predators.
Well, most cats are. My cat is definitely not.
No, yeah, fair. I have 3 cats, and one of them is definitely not an apex predator.
No, my cat would not survive outside. He shakes whenever he is outside.
Oh.
He is absolutely terrified of going outside. We've taken him out a few times, obviously, because sometimes we'd have to take him to the vet, or just when we moved to the apartment, we would have to take him, and he hates it.
It'd be like, you know, I guess it kind of would be like us being taken out into like the universe by like an alien species and be like, look at all the stuff that's around you. It'd be just like terrifying and overwhelming.
Nah, I live for that day. I pray every day that something like that will happen to me, or I just get to be like some abnormal situation happening where I'm like, oh, thank God, I don't have to go through college anymore.
Some alien picks you up as a pet.
And I'm like, you know what? All right, shit, if you want. I'm not the best pet, but if you'll have me.
Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely some days I wouldn't mind that myself.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely have a very creative type mind, so I often think about like, God, wouldn't it be so cool if I just had these abnormal things happen, or just had this ability to do this or that, and just, I don't know. I think it'd just be fun to live with like superpowers.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
But
more non-traditional superpowers, though. You know, something unique, maybe.
Oh, the one recently I've been thinking of that I'm like, oh, I would do terrible things with this, but if I had like controlling plants, like I forget.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
I forget what it was called. Like what it's called. Let me look it up. But yeah, just There's a specific term.
Is it like one of those something kinesis type things?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, while you're looking that up, I do creative writing. One of the stories I'm working on kind of involves stuff like that, but I'm trying to do like more non-traditional powers, like controlling atomic structures of things. Just to throw a curveball.
No, I'm not getting any results. I can't find anything. But it was a specifically cool title that I can remember from like a board game that had someone had like the Blankomancer, and it was someone who controls plants.
That's pretty cool, honestly. That'd be a fun one.
Oh yeah, and I thought all the different ways I'd be able to use it, and like, oh, maybe it would be like I can travel through the earth, just like by having the plants kind of like engulf me and then just like take me through the roots or something.
Oh, that's interesting.
And just travel. But I also know I'd be like a terrible person. Like I would abuse the hell out of that power of like being like, well, this person's a bad person.
I don't know how that tree fell on him.
Nature hell have no fear, like Mother Nature scorned or something like that. But yeah, definitely it'd be like, if I had any powers, I would definitely abuse the hell out of them. And that's the reason I don't have superpowers, is because I'm not worthy of them.
Yeah.
So that's why whatever God, universe, whatever you want to call it, has not given me. Also because I don't think in physical, like in the way our reality works, superpowers is a thing that happens. But you never know. Maybe there's like some secret government conspiracy or agency that works on superhuman beings.
That would be interesting to find out one day. I can tell you one thing, though. If I had that plant superpower, the first thing I'd do is make it so my plants could talk, so they could tell me when they needed to be watered, so I would stop killing them.
See, I see things like that all the time where people are like, oh, I wish I could talk to animals. I wish I could talk to plants. And I'm like, as someone who is in like the kind of like biological department with animals, I feel like you would just be very disappointed.
Probably.
With what animals have to say, because obviously they don't. Because when you get animals to talk in like science fiction or in like fantasy and stuff like that,
they just talk like us.
Yeah, they're talking as if they have like a higher consciousness.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like the way obviously animals work now, I don't believe that they have kind of like a higher, like as heightened of a conscious as we do. Obviously, they can have emotions, they can play, they can have thoughts and stuff like that. But I don't think that it's on the same level.
I don't think their reasoning abilities are quite on par.
No, I think if you were to like be able to talk to dogs or any animal, and like you come home to your dog, and all you would hear is just excited, 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 excited.
Yeah.
You're home, you're home, you're home, you're home, type of thing.
Probably. It'd be like talking to like maybe like a 3 or 4 year old.
Yeah. I think that's like the best outcome is like you talk to a dolphin or something, and that has the equivalence of like 3, 4, 5-year-old, and that'd be like, well, that's neat. Also, dolphins are dicks.
Yeah.
So
they seriously are.
So the dolphins would probably cuss you out.
They probably would. Or they would like just lie to you to get you to come closer and then beat the crap out of you.
Exactly.
It is interesting you bring that up though, because using AI, scientists have been working on figuring out like whale language, and they're actually they had an interaction, kind of using their AI models and what they've learned. They had I think it was just a very basic like greeting type interaction with a whale, where they made the sound that they assumed to be a greeting, and it responded with what they assumed to be a greeting as well.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely don't think animals can't communicate at all. Obviously, that would be a stupid take to have. Obviously, animals can communicate in so many different ways.
Yeah.
In so many different methods. Whether it be like frequencies like dolphins and whales, or whether it just be like body language like dogs or cats.
Right.
There's so many different ways that animals communicate. I just don't think that people think it out when they'd be like, oh, I wish I could talk to animals, because I think it would be very boring. You do it once and you'd be like,
okay, I'm done with this.
yeah, you would be like, oh, this is all they can do.
Now, talking to like one of the higher primates might be kind of interesting, like a bonobo or orangutan.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
I mean, Coco, the gorilla, I'm sure you're familiar with that. Like, she was able to communicate in sign. Yeah.
I believe she's the one who asked for a kitten.
Yes.
And when they brought her a stuffed kitten, she was like sad.
Yeah.
She said sad.
Yeah.
And they brought her a live kitten, and she was very happy.
Yeah.
So obviously these animals can communicate in very specific ways. But I think like you're right, where it's kind of on that intelligence level as like a toddler type of thing, which still is impressive.
Yeah.
It's still very interesting, would be interesting to do, but obviously only in very specific circumstances. Also different, like even in animals in the same species, I just because Coco was able to talk in certain things, I don't think every gorilla would be able to.
Right, was she an outlier, was she an anomaly among...
Did they run certain experiments on her where they like did brain teasers with her growing up as a child, and that kind of allowed her brain to develop a little bit higher than the average gorilla? I don't know that, but
it's an interesting question.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where even like environmental factors or just biological factors, just maybe they picked Coco at random and she just so happened to be a gorilla that had a higher intelligence than, or higher IQ, whatever you want to call it, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, than most gorillas.
Yeah.
So it's definitely very interesting to think about. Like, I think that's why I love animals so much, is because there's, I mean, no shit, but there's like a huge variety in like species of like what each species can do. I definitely think the most interesting is figuring out like self-consciousness in animals. Have you seen the test they do with animals where they'll put a sticker or they'll paint a little spot on the animal and put them in front of a mirror?
Yes. Yeah.
And then if they can realize, oh, that's me, and either peel it off or like scratch at it, then they're like, oh, this animal has a sense of self.
Yeah.
They don't see another, like, they don't see a mirror and just attack at it like some more like primitive animals.
Yeah, like, I've seen videos of bears where they put a mirror out in like the woods, and this black bear comes up to it and just goes crazy and like rips it off the tree, and like it's very interesting.
It's like clearly that animal doesn't have a sense of like, oh, that's me, and doesn't have like that, oh, like a sense of what's the term object permanence or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, it just sees another bear and attacks.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen the videos of like bearded dragons being put in front of a mirror and they get all aggressive and they bob their head.
Yeah.
And they just run at it and scratch at it.
Yeah, they're definitely not the most intelligent of creatures.
Cute, no, but they're super cute. I have a bearded dragon.
I almost got one. It was between that and a cat, and I decided on a cat.
That's fair. Cats, well, I was going to say cats are more cuddly, but not in every case. The bearded dragon I have was always very cuddly.
Yeah, I've heard that they can be, like you said, very cuddly. I didn't know enough about them, and I don't want to get an exotic pet without, like, knowing all the details.
That's fair. I'd say bearded dragons are honestly becoming a lot more mainstream.
Yeah, they're, and as far as exotic pets go, they're pretty easy to take care of, but, I struggle with plants some days, so I didn't really want to test the waters.
You gotta, when they grow up, you feed plants to the bearded dragon, so I guess as long as you can buy some lettuce or collard greens or whatever, I forget exactly. Not
contribute
mustard,
to the circle
not
of life.
Mustard greens, not like mustard greens. I remember that's bad for them. You want to feed them more like, or was that the good one? Oh God, it's been so long since I did the research. I don't take care of her anymore. She's back at home with my parents.
Gotcha.
Just because I couldn't bring her up with me at the apartment because that's just too many animals.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have anywhere to put her.
Yeah.
I did have her up with me at college when I came to Kent State, when I lived in the dorms.
Oh, that's cool.
I had her as an emotional support animal.
Oh, that's really cool.
Because, she could do this like level of stuff as like dogs, where like they notice you're sad and come cuddle with you. But definitely when I was feeling sad, I would take her out and just I would take her out to the commons.
Oh, that's cool.
And just kind of let her run around a little bit in like the little common area.
Did you have like a little kind of like vest and like leash lead for her, or?
I was supposed to.
But she never just like ran away.
Well, I would only do it if there's like closed doors or anything like that. And if she did run away, she can't run very they can run a little bit fast, but I could always catch up to her.
Yeah, that's
But
fair.
I wouldn't take her I wouldn't take her outside and let her go free.
Right.
I would just like in the commons room of the dorm.
Yeah.
Or I would let her just run around on me. And usually when I had her close to me, she wouldn't run too far. Sometimes she would explore a little bit, but she never went like too terribly far.
That's really cool.
So I know I've been talking a little bit here, but I want to bring it back to you. Do you have a partner?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. My fiance, we've been together 6 years.
Oh, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
How did you two meet?
Online.
I believe you told this story before last time, but do you mind telling it again?
No, sure. Yeah, so I tried, online dating, got one of the apps. It was going okay, but there just wasn't a whole lot of. It was weird.
Not a lot of like meaningful relationships.
Oh, right. It was just, you would chat for a little bit and then it would go away. So I was like, I'm just going to kind of see if I meet somebody out in the wild. And I went to delete the app and, there was just something in the back of my mind. I was like, hey, why don't you check your email one more time? I was like, yeah, fine. So I went on there and I checked it and there was a message from her. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I replied and we got talking and obviously really hit it off. And there were probably about 5 times that things happened that almost completely derailed us being together. And it was really interesting because it was like one of those kind of statistical anomalies where we kind of beat the odds every time. And like I said, we've been together for 6 years. And, it's interesting to think kind of, well, if I didn't check the email, where would I be? Or if I didn't react this way for this thing, there's just so many little variables in life.
I definitely think about that a lot in my life. I think I talked about it before, but I like to think that, like, if there was anything else I could, like, really get into that I wish I was intelligent enough to really understand, it's, like, probability.
Yeah.
Like, the
same.
probability of things. Of, like, how does this chance meeting then affect my life from now on?
Yeah.
You know what? There's a superpower I would want to know the probability of things and, like, to see the future and be, like, not even to see the, like, future sight or anything like that, to be like, if I take this chance, where does that lead me?
Yeah, there's a 25% chance that this will happen, and that would be quite the power to have.
Oh yeah,
I'd be buying a lot of lottery tickets with that.
Probably. I just like do the thing where like I don't know if you ever seen like someone with, like in a show where, like people with future vision have like try to figure out a code and they're just like 1, nope, 2, nope, 3, nope, 4, 4,
yeah,
1, nope, 2, and then they just go in for the whole number and like. Oh, well,
just kind of look through it, and it's like, 100%. Well, might as well go with that one.
Well, I guess if I must.
Yeah.
God, if I don't play or anything like that, but winning the lottery that would be a dream.
Yeah, that would be.
I would say never have to worry about anything ever again, but I probably would.
It's just amazing how many people go broke that win the lottery.
I know. I've seen so many videos of people like winning the lottery and they just like spend it all, and I'm like,
I bought a yacht. It's like you can't replace what you just got. Like you work at Walmart. You're not making a ton of money to replace what you just spent.
Well, what's funny too about that is I had a teacher who was very rich, and this was back at my home school. I took a biotechnology course, and he was someone who retired from a very wealthy paying like technical like lab job. So he was very loaded, like had multiple houses in multiple countries. And one of the things he said was, oh yeah, I would never buy a boat because the expensive part isn't buying the boat, it's
upkeeping it. Yep.
And I'm like,
it's such a pain.
I would imagine, because you can't even use it, like depending on where you live, you can't use it for like half the year. Depending on how, like, if the lake is frozen.
That's why you just rent a party barge or something if you want to go out in the lake with some friends.
The only way I could ever see myself actually, like, buying a boat is if I had, like, a lake house.
But at that point, you don't, I mean, if you can afford a lake house and you can afford the boat, then you don't really have to worry about the upkeep.
And at that point, if you're living in a lake house, you're probably living in an area where the water doesn't, like, freeze over.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah.
So you could just go out at all times.
Yeah.
But also, I don't see what I would do with a boat, because I'm not, like, a very big, like, I'm not, like a fisher. I don't particularly enjoy just like riding out into the sunset type of thing. I don't like. I used to enjoy driving a little bit, but now I've kind of like. I don't like it nearly as much. I used to DoorDash a little bit just because I like driving, but I just kind of now I just see it as a way to get from point A to point B.
Yeah,
and I'm just like it. Would I take a road trip with a bunch of cool friends? Probably, but I don't see myself like. Particularly just being like, I'm just going to go out to drive.
Yeah, and then it's having to deal with the other people that makes it so difficult.
That's why I kind of like driving at night, but only in like very lit areas. Because otherwise I am terrified driving at night, especially in the rain.
Oh, that's awful.
Driving in the night in the rain.
Especially when you get that reflection coming up and you can't actually see. Oh, I hate that.
So terrible, especially in like a dimly lit area.
Country roads, yep. Yep.
That's when I'm like, okay, I'm going like 15 under the speed limit.
Yep. Yep. And then you have somebody that comes up in like an F-350, high beams blaring, just riding up on you. I will say one thing. It's kind of funny. So I grew up in New York, and people from New York get a bad reputation for being assholes. And I'm not saying they're not, but yeah. After moving to Ohio, I've never seen such aggressive drivers.
Really?
Yeah, like Ohio drivers are a special breed, and that's coming from somebody who lived in New York their whole life.
Did you live in like New York City, or did you live in like?
Central and then downstate.
Okay.
Traveled to New York City, and
Okay, I just didn't know if it was like a big city area where you have all those like narrow streets and like tight turns and stuff like that, where you don't have the opportunity to be like as aggressive as a driver.
Yeah. I lived in a few places. I lived in Rochester for a while, just outside of Syracuse for a while, and then downstate in the Finger Lakes. So there's definitely a different vibe for most of the places I lived, and I mean, drivers were stupid. Don't get me wrong.
But you get that anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. There's just an aggression I've noticed, in this area. I'm not quite sure where that comes from, but
yeah, Ohio is definitely a place to live. That's for sure.
It's a place to go to school. That's how I'm looking at it.
That's completely fair. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy Kent.
Yeah, Kent's nice.
It's a very nice school.
It is.
It's very, very accepting and welcoming of all kinds.
It is, and they have a lot of resources for their students too, which is
it's like I had no idea that they had this podcast recording booth, and I was so glad they did, because I was like, because obviously I had this idea for a podcast for a long while, and my biggest thing was like, where do I record it?
Yeah, exactly. It's not cheap to get all the stuff you need to set it up.
Not only that, but it's like, because I bought some microphones, and I was just going to use my laptop to record, but I was literally like, where do I go record this at?
Yeah.
Do I meet someone in a commons area and just hope no one ever walks in? Do I, do I, God forbid, invite them to my apartment? Like, how does that work? Yeah. So when I was looking it up, and I don't remember if someone mentioned it at some point, but I ended up finding this place, and I was like, thank God, because that alleviates just so much stress and so much like for both me and the other person. Because imagine because obviously it's already a bit of a like gamble or two, taking a chance when you agree to meet with someone and like, go on their podcast,
right?
Like a startup podcast, but then to have to do it in like their apartment or something like that.
Yeah, that's just a level of awkwardness that probably turn a lot of people off.
Exactly. So just being like I mean, some people I'm sure would be fine with, but just the majority of people I know, or I know a lot more people would definitely say no if I'm like, yeah, and we're recording it in my apartment because that's the only place to record it, and they'd be like,
you know what, I'm busy that day.
Yeah, but just being like, oh, it's in a common area at Kent, we can do it on the weekends, free parking on the weekends, so that way there's no like pay, like you don't have to pay for parking or anything like that.
Yeah, another really like great thing is like the mental health services they have here are really robust.
Yeah, I do my I see the nurse practitioner at the DeWeese Center for all my meds. Yep. So that's nice.
Yep. Yeah, they really do well by their students. I'll give them that.
I did end up seeing a counselor,
Same.
a student counselor here, but I had to stop seeing them, one, because apparently soon they were going to be moving on to their next like graduate assignment, and that involves no longer seeing patients. And another thing, I self-hospitalized myself for a little bit, and because I did that, I was considered too severe to be seeing a student.
I guess that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, I'm not bad at the system or anything like that. It was just
still frustrating for you, though.
Oh, it was very. He was actually the one who helped me kickstart this podcast. I had the idea much before that. I just never had the motivation to. Yeah. And thanks to his help, I was actually able to start this whole thing. So I have a lot of gratitude towards him.
That's awesome.
And what he was able to help me achieve.
Yeah.
That being said, though, we've hit about an hour 4 minutes. So I think this would be a nice time to kind of wrap this up. So,
sure.
Do you have any final statements, any closing statements, anything that you'd like to just share, any piece of advice you'd have to give to any of the listeners?
Piece of advice. Do what makes you happy. You only live once. If you're not doing what makes you happy, it's not worth doing.
That's pretty damn good advice. All right. With that, do I have your permission to have recorded this whole podcast and then post this up on YouTube?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. And with that, see ya.
All right. Thanks.